Good morning to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane Pro and HD video blog for September 5th, 2013. Tropics getting quite active right now. Still no hurricanes on the map, but I think that's going to change over the next week or so. I'll talk about why in just a moment. First, we have Tropical Storm Gabrielle grabbing the headlines down here in the Caribbean. I do think that this area is going to go on to develop later today and into tomorrow, bringing the threat of a tropical storm to portions of the Mexican coastline on the western part of the southwest Gulf of Mexico. And then, as I mentioned, the eastern Atlantic here I think is going to get quite busy. I wouldn't worry too much about this, but I think we're going to have a good tropical wave coming off of Africa, which should develop into the season's first hurricane with time. Let's take a look at a satellite loop of the western two-thirds of the Atlantic basin this morning. And you can see Gabrielle down here plaguing Puerto Rico, U.S. British Virgin Islands with lots of heavy rainfall. Point out a couple things. Upper level lows starting to string out some of the energy. This is a competing factor. This convective mess to the northeast of Gabrielle, all competing factors with the system. And you know how I like to look at the 850 millibar vorticity. And while we do have more concentrated spin or vorticity associated directly with the circulation of Gabrielle, you can still see competing areas of energy around it. Here's the vorticity starting to take shape in the Bay of Campeche and this system west of the Cape Verde Islands. Interesting, Hurricane Center mentions this area that, yes, it's starting to flare up a little bit, but in the next couple of days they say that conditions are going to become very unfavorable. You rarely see them use adjectives like that, especially on the negative side. Lots of times you see them say that conditions are quite conducive or whatever, but rarely do you see them say that they are very unfavorable. So that tells me that for whatever the reason, this area for the next couple of days is going to be quite unfavorable for development until things change, I think, with a tropical wave coming off of Africa. Now I want to show you the radar loop out of San Juan, Puerto Rico real quick here, just to emphasize and drive home the point about heavy rainfall. The U.S. British Virgin Islands and eastern Puerto Rico being hammered by very heavy rain. Now, while this might look like the eye, if you want to call it that, that is definitely not the case in this situation. Gabrielle, rather poorly organized. The center of circulation at the surface probably not aligned very well with the rest of the circulation of the storm. But very heavy rain over the eastern third of Puerto Rico, throughout St. Croix, and a good deal of the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. Just a nasty, miserable day down there. And this is going to persist, unfortunately, throughout the rest of today and part of tomorrow, because Gabrielle is only moving at about 7, no more than 10 miles per hour. It's not moving very fast, so this heavy rain is going to continue to be an issue. Now let's take a look at the GFS, Global Forecast System, over the next 5 days. This is the 850 millibar layer of the atmosphere, 5,000 feet up. And what I want to show you, here in the southwest Gulf of Mexico, 24 hours from early this morning, so this will be valid at around 2 a.m. tomorrow morning, Friday morning, we do have a nice area of vorticity starting to take shape here. This, like I said, a small system could develop right as it goes into Mexico. Here is all the different competing areas of energy, vorticity in the atmosphere associated with Gabrielle. Interesting, kind of odd to see all these different lobes of vorticity here. Maybe the model having a difficult time resolving what's going on. It's hard to say. And then this is the system that the Hurricane Center said this area will become very unfavorable over the next few days. But watch what happens off the coast of Africa here as we move through the next few days. Okay, so here's 48 hours out, and whatever we have here in the southwest Gulf of Mexico pretty much gone at this point in time. Then you see Gabrielle fairly focused here. The trough that was dug in over the western Atlantic starting to lift out. This system a non-factor, and then we start to get the vorticity or energy coming off the coast of Africa. 72 hours out in time, pardon me, the circulation here, the vorticity of Gabrielle still intact. The ridge starting to build back in over the eastern Atlantic. Heights starting to rise over the western Atlantic ever so slightly. In the atmosphere, the high pressure starting to build back in as this upper level trough lifts on out of the area, and there's Gabrielle still sitting down there, 72 hours out just to the north and east of the Turks and Caicos. And then here comes this very well-organized tropical wave coming off the coast of Africa. By 96 hours, GFS starts to string out the energy associated with Gabrielle once again. A really large area of high pressure building over the eastern Atlantic. And then here is our very big envelope of energy, heat in the atmosphere, this tropical wave coming off that the computer model's really jumping on to develop. Finally, by day 5, a couple of interesting things to note. Some piece of something left over from Gabrielle here, while other parts of the energy associated with it, I don't know. You see the model do weird things. Sometimes it feeds back and strings energy out into the flow. Maybe you can ignore this. It's hard to tell, but it is interesting that there is some piece of vorticity left in the southwest Atlantic. There's Bermuda right there, and then you start to see the ridge building back into the north of whatever that is. So we're going to keep an eye on this. Maybe something left from Gabrielle or itself will still be there. Maybe it's not going to go on out to sea. We'll have to wait and just watch how this evolves. And then here, folks, is the makings of a very strong tropical cyclone. Those are the Cape Verde Islands. They could get raked with quite a bit of heavy weather over the next few days. Kind of ironic that the one area in the Atlantic basin that you don't usually think of as having hurricanes could have quite a potent tropical system pass through. I don't think it'll become a hurricane between Cape Verde, which is right there, and the Cape Verde Islands themselves, but that's a very potent-looking tropical cyclone in the model field. Let me just zoom in on that if this will let me. There we go. That is a strong-looking system in the model, and this is only 5 days out. So we'll watch and see. Most of the time when something develops this far east and this far north, they do catch a ride on the trough and usually turn out to sea, but sometimes they don't, and they can make it all the way across. But we're going to have a lot to talk about over the next several days. No major impacts, but those heavy rain events, again, I cannot emphasize enough, they cannot be discounted. And people in Puerto Rico, the U.S. British Virgin Islands, and surrounding areas know all about that. Kind of a yucky day down there, like I mentioned. And then that system approaching the coast of Mexico from the southwest Gulf, also another big rainmaker probably in the works for that area. And you remember Tropical Storm Fernan killed at least a dozen people with its heavy rainfall in that same general area. So that is a threat. All right. Well, that is it for today. A lot to watch over the next few days. I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. That's my website. Always an honor and a privilege to produce these videos for you on Hurricane Pro in HD. With that being said, I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.